I thought we'd bring on Zack Smith, who's a legal fellow with the Heritage Foundation. And let me put it straight to you, Zack, this way. Welcome to the program, by the way. But regardless of the outcome, can Americans really trust this election system that is so fraught with problems?
Well, thanks for having me on, Lars. And I think there are certainly allegations of voter fraud or irregularities or improprieties that need to be investigated. And President Trump is well within his rights to file the election-related lawsuits that he has. And I think it's important for us as a country so that we can have confidence in the integrity of our process, that these challenges are allowed to play out and to work their way through our court systems.
Do you get the sense, though, that people like Joe Biden and the Democrats are incredibly incurious about these problems, even though some of them seem to be, fairly well documented? I'll give you small examples. State of Nevada has about 9,000 votes in question right now because apparently some of those people are dead. And some of those people are no longer living in the state of Nevada. Now, even if it's only a fraction of that, the fact that dead people and non-residents could show up as having cast ballots, even if the number was a tenth of that, is a serious concern. It suggests bigger problems, doesn't it?
Well, I think any fraudulently cast ballot is a serious concern. I agree with you 100% there. And I think really at the end of the day, what all of us should want is for every legally cast ballot to count and for every illegally cast ballot to be excluded. And so in places like Nevada, we're seeing a lot of issues because there were changes to the election process very close to the election. And we're seeing the results of the fact that Nevada has notoriously bad voter registration rules. They're out of date. They have a lot of people who have moved out of state or who have passed away still on the rolls. And so I think as we look for ways to improve our election system, to bring integrity to the process, maintaining the accuracy and currentness of state voter registration rules has to be at the forefront of those efforts.
Well, Zack, I've got to ask you, you're a legal guy. I'm not a lawyer. But were the changes at the last minute in Nevada, and we can talk about Pennsylvania separately, were those changes made by the state legislature as the Constitution provides?
Well, I think we're seeing that issue in many states, and we saw it in many states this past year. And you're absolutely right, Lars. The Constitution provides state legislatures, not governors, not election officials, not state courts, not federal courts, state legislatures with the authority to make election-related changes. And so, again, as we look back at this election, look to see what went wrong, how we can improve, that too has to be a primary focus, ensuring that it's our elected state legislatures making these very important decisions about election processes and procedures.
Well, and the reason the founders, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know the legal background better than I do, the reason the founders said we want state legislatures to do this is that they know those are the people's representatives. Some of them have to run every couple of years. Some of them have to run more, less frequently than that. But those people represent the folks. The federal judges are appointed for life, and they're not very answerable. And even state court judges are not terribly answerable to the public. So the founders of our country said we want the legislatures to make this decision. Isn't that an easy legal case that if Pennsylvania or Nevada or other states counted ballots toward one candidate or the other that came in after the deadline, and that change was made not by the legislature, I would think you wouldn't even have to be a legal scholar to say, then those aren't legal ballots, right?
Well, sometimes common sense it comes easier if you're not a legal scholar, it seems like. But, I think one of the big issues that we saw with this election is that there were changes made at the last minute before the election was taking place, and in some cases, even after votes had already been cast. And that creates confusion. It creates chaos. Again, if we look at Pennsylvania historically does not have a lot of experience processing and counting absentee ballots. And so when the number of absentee ballots or mail-in ballots cast there greatly increased this year, as we can see, they're having trouble processing those changes. And so I think as the Trump campaign really litigates a lot of these issues, unfortunately, they're facing uphill battles in many of these courts. And they're facing uphill battles for two reasons. One is that election fraud is very difficult to detect and very difficult to prove in a court of law. And the second fact is that even if there is some degree of fraud detected, judges are typically very hesitant to overturn or intervene in the electoral process unless there's overwhelming evidence of systemic type fraud. And so,
except Zach, that's the part that seems really problematic to me. So you have judges who say, oh, you want a last-minute change that appears to violate Article 2 of the Constitution? Sure, no problem. Oh, you want a change that actually points out fraudulent ballots were cast, so we can't allow you to certify a vote and cause the Electoral College votes to go to Donald Trump? Oh, no, we can't possibly do that. That would be too upsetting. How is it that judges say, one change that's absolutely prohibited by the U.S. Constitution is easy peasy, but the change that says, hey, you have a fraudulent election, you can't assign electoral votes based on fraud. Oh, no, I'm a judge. I can't do so. That would be too upsetting to too many people. That seems like a real double standard, doesn't it?
Well, one of the cases pending before the U.S. Supreme Court right now involves that decision by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to order state officials to count absentee ballots that arrive after Election Day unless state officials can clearly prove that they were sent after Election Day. And so what that means, even if there's a potential that a ballot wasn't mailed by Election Day, unless the state can clearly prove that, they have to count it. And so I think this Pennsylvania case, the U.S. Supreme Court was asked to review it twice before the election. They declined to do it. It's still pending there now. I certainly think it would be useful, it would be beneficial if there was some resolution to that issue. Unfortunately, it still remains to be seen whether or not the U.S. Supreme Court will take up the issue and rule on the merits of that case.
You know what's funny about that, Zach? I am not the biggest fan of John Roberts, Chief Justice, because he's a guy who seems more concerned about the legacy of the court. That's why we got the Obamacare decision we got, that he said, well, I've got to worry about the legacy of the court, not appear to be political. In this case, if he's concerned about whether or not Americans trust our election system, and he effectively says, we're not going to hear it, so therefore, yes, we had cheating, but no, you don't get a fix to the cheating. If you cheat well enough, if you cheat in the right way, we're going to let you get away with cheating. I can't imagine something that would undercut people's faith in the election system more than accepting, well, it's a cheat. So we're like China or Cuba or Russia, where when we heard about elections there, we said, oh, yeah, but those are fake elections. They're engineered. Are we going to have to start saying that about American elections, too?
Well, unfortunately, one of the other challenges we saw with this past election cycle is that poll watchers, those who observe the ballots being tabulated, were not being given meaningful access. And so I think anytime those types of concerns about whether improprieties are occurring, whether any shenanigans are taking place, anytime you can bring sunshine to bear on those processes and procedures, it really helps ensure the confidence that we can have in the process.
No doubt. That's Zack Smith from the Heritage Foundation. Zack, thanks very much.